Wonge varini kinyokin kikusiake maninki.
Welcome back to our AI Transformation Playbook. In our previous episode, we talked about why AI projects fail, why readiness matters, why organizations struggle with scaling, and what successful AI transformation actually looks like. But today, I want to challenge something deeper. Most organizations are asking, how much can AI do? I think one more important question is, what happens when AI changes how people think, decide, and work? But while everyone is focused on productivity gains, I believe there are costs emerging that many organizations aren't measuring. Today, with my usual guest and partner, Scott Archibald, transformational specialist. Scott, what's your perspective on this?
I think it's a welcome, and thanks for having me here. And I think it's a great intro. I think you're spot on with this. I think a lot of companies are looking at AI. They're thinking about it as another technology, right? So it's another implementation of technology. They're looking at, how do I measure productivity gains employees might be, or ROI, or more efficiency, cycle times on decreasing, things like that, cost reduction, maybe something along those lines. And they're kind of missing some of the metrics on how to transform or strategically move the business forward. And so I think people are stuck in an old mentality of this is just another technology, rather than how do I really take advantage of what AI can offer, and how are my employees thinking differently about their jobs and the work they do and the work they want to do based on how they could use AI. And so I think that's a really interesting topic for us to dig into here.
Following up on what you said, what they are measuring aren't actually showing up in the metrics, and some of those impacts may not appear until years later. And that's what I want us to unpack today. So let's start with a simple question. When executives approve AI investment, what are they actually evaluating?
And I think it always comes down to ROI. I think that's going to be the knee-jerk reaction. That's going to be the first one. What's the ROI? If I'm going to spend $100 million, what am I going to get back from that, right? So it's your typical business case. And so there has to be some kind of ROI. But I think people get caught up in the dollars or that. So then they start to factor in productivity gains. Okay, I'm going to get a productivity gain. I'm going to measure that by this much per hour per worker, right? I think back to the opening comments, I think they're leaving out the strategic part of this. Well, what if I can just change the way we do business? What if we can leapfrog the competitor? Not sure people are thinking about that. I think those will wind up being the leaders in their industries if they're successful with those programs that they're doing, but they're thinking about it completely different than a lot of their peers at this point.
Exactly, and that's very important. But what about the things that organizations aren't measuring? What do you think are the examples?
I think confidence. What's the quality of the decisions that the system might be making? So if AI is recommending something or even making a decision autonomously, what's the quality of that? How much can I trust that? Right? How much am I, as an employee, how much is my expertise being developed based on help from AI? Or it's still this feeling, I think there's still this kind of back and forth of, am I being developed or replaced by AI, right? So am I being furthered along and being a better employee, so to speak, or am I being replaced? And I think that tide is starting to shift towards I'm being developed, but I think the fear is I'm ultimately being replaced. I think that's still in the back of the minds of a lot of employees. And so there's that knowledge retention. So if I've been an employee for 10 or 20 years with the company, or even 5 years, and I really understand company, the process, the environment, the clients, with the retention of that knowledge that I have, how do I get my knowledge that may not be documented anywhere specifically? How do I get that into AI, into the system, so to speak, so that it can use my knowledge and then help me make better decisions down the road? I think all of those come into play when we think about this.
So it means the takeaway here is, while many organizations are measuring what AI actually produce, very few are actually measuring what it might be replacing. So if we dive in like a mini case study, so imagine a customer support organization where before implementing AI, employees are solving problems manually. And after AI, responses are generated instantly. Productivity will improve, leadership celebrate, but 5 years down the line, those employees may no longer have the same troubleshooting capacity they once had.
Yeah. KPI improved and the quality basically declined, right? So the underlying capability and the quality of what was coming out was not as good as what they had before. Now, they may not have a way to measure that in the first place, so they really didn't know other than people started to complain, right? So if your measure is, hey, I want to reduce costs, it's an ROI or an efficiency gain or something like that, and you hit that measurement, but client satisfaction goes downhill as a result of that, I don't think you've won the battle, right? So you have to be very careful. I think this is why you really need a balanced scorecard when you look at these things. Sure, you want to look at cost and you want to understand how am I measuring from a cost reduction or a cost efficiency. I also want to make sure employee satisfaction, client satisfaction are remaining high or going upwards while my cost is going down, right? And I think that's one of the problems that we're seeing right now. And we've seen this before with other technology. This is nothing new in the technology space, right? We've seen this before. You get overly focused on the technology implementation and you forget about the people in the process, or the people being your employees and your clients, and the process of what it does to the other organization that you're working with. So I think these metrics are important, but you can't overly focus on just efficiency. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And we've seen this before, right? So not new from that standpoint, but interesting to watch it develop. And I think there's a little bit more of a need to focus on the human part of it, because there is such interaction between the system and the employer, the system and the client, or both of those, right? And so taking outputs from AI, being able to use that as an employee to make things better for a client. But if what I'm getting from AI isn't high quality or isn't trusted, well, then what's going to happen? People aren't going to use it, right? They're going to go around the system. So again, nothing new, but I think amplified onto a bigger stage with AI these days.
Yeah, which definitely means AI can improve performance metrics while reducing organization capability. So now we dive into the AI dependency trap. So about dependency, I think this is one of the biggest emerging risks nobody discusses about.
Yeah. The technology should always augment the human capability, right? Yeah. We're not really thinking about replacement. Like, there's going to be some opportunities where there's something that's being done that's very, it's a very low level task. Okay, you may replace, but you're not going to take that person probably and say, hey, we have no use for you. You're going to redeploy the person to something else of higher value. So I think the replacement that could happen is at a very low level, but for knowledge workers, see AI, and I think what we've seen across the board is more of an augmentation for them to do better work, faster work, even more work. They can just, because AI can deal with so much so fast, it can really help you move things along. But again, you have to understand the workflow, the process, and I think you brought up trust. I think that's a really big one too that people need to look at.
So the problem comes again. If someone can perform a task without AI, how do they know AI's answer is correct?
Right. I think that's the problem, right? If I don't have AI and I don't know what the answer is, how is AI going to help me? If I do have AI and I didn't know what the answer was before AI, how do I know that AI is giving me the correct answer? And I think there's been studies on this. People that are newer in their role. So if you're 1 to 2 years in your role and you're using AI, you don't have enough experience to know whether AI is telling you the right thing or the wrong thing, right? Yeah. So you either blindly trust it or you don't trust it at all. If you're 5 to 10 years in your role and AI tells you something, you know right away whether that is right or if that just doesn't seem like, I don't know, but it doesn't feel right to me. Like, answer seems strange, right? So you have a little bit more knowledge and background to go on. I think it's those further in role, so more in role, 5 to 10 year, 15 in role, those people are going to benefit AI much more because they'll see something that's right. They'll be able to take that and use it right away and leverage that. And they'll know when something's not, and they'll know how to re-ask a prompt or how to change the process or get in touch with somebody to say, hey, I keep getting an answer in this area that doesn't seem right. We can go fix it, right?
So which means if you can't do the work without AI, you are not supervising AI. AI is supervising you. So
I think that's, you validate the output that you're getting from AI. I think when you're more junior, that becomes really hard.
right.
I think when you're more senior, it's easier because you environment better, right? How does AI help that junior person? Well, I think until we get to a point where AI is more trusted, I'm not sure we get there until that happens. And then it's going to depend on, well, what's the impact of the answer, right? So if I was to move forward with the wrong answer, I'm a train conductor or train operator, and I switch the tracks incorrectly, that could be catastrophic, right? So I want to be really sure of the answer there. Yeah. If it's something else where the impact is really not a problem, if we make the wrong decision, we can correct it without harm to anyone or any person or any, financially or whatever. Those are going to be a little bit more acceptable. But I think that's going to take some time to figure out, like, how do we test this out in areas that are safe versus areas that you don't want to test things out until you're really sure that you're getting the right answers. And I think it is, as well as I do, the AI is making decisions based on what it has, data that it has. So if the data is flawed to begin with, the output's going to be flawed, right? It's kind of a computing one. Yeah.
Let's talk about another thing that feels very familiar from the old IT world, shadow AI.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So seen shadow IT for years. When the cloud came out, this was one thing that drove IT leaders crazy because anybody could go buy a cloud service. In many cases, they were free to start with, and you'd pay money over time, or maybe you would even pay money when you first sign up, but people had budgets and you got to get my business needs met. And so we saw this kind of shadow cloud IT environment evolve over time, right? Or come out. And I think AI is the same way right now. People are using AI for all sorts of things where they feel like they can get value, whether it be personally or for the organization, and they're not waiting for IT. And so I think it creates chaos initially, right? And I think what will happen, we'll probably see a pattern that we've seen before where people run out, they'll get invested into AI solutions they think are right for them, whether that be personally or for the organization, business unit. Then they'll realize over time, like, I don't want to manage this. I don't want to be an IT person. Why isn't my IT group managing my AI implementation? They'll start to migrate it over. I think we'll see that happen. I think that's going to be just the way that the world evolves on this one. Is AI is so readily available and getting into so many existing systems that they are already, whether you're an IT leader and you think, oh, well, I have control of my AI implementation within my company, I think you're kidding yourself right now. Of a company of any size, on up, AI is already in your company. It's being used by everyone probably, whether they know it or not in some cases.
So let's talk about a unique case where an employee uploads information into a common platform. No malicious intention.
Yep.
Each organization risks there. So the question is, are employees AI? Are employees using AI that leadership doesn't know about?
I think that's where I think leadership and the security organization, the IT organization, the leadership team within a company, they should be very clear on, how do I know if I'm even using AI to their employees, right? And what are things that are okay to get into AI from a company perspective? And some companies may say nothing should get into a public AI system. Might say, well, these are okay and these aren't. That's a leadership issue and a communication or activity that should happen within the company, and some education that employees need to go through. And I think this gets back to, A few episodes back, we talked about literacy, and we got literacy at the executive level. Well, there's a literacy at the employee level, right? And I think some companies do really good with this, and I think some companies I've seen that take it too far to where the employees start to think AI is bad. So I'm not going to use AI for anything, and I think that's a mistake. I think then you've gone far the other way. You're so fearful that, oh, my company intellectual property might get into a public AI system. I'm just not going to use AI for anything. Well, I think that's a mistake, right? So there's a literacy program, there's a communication effort that needs to happen within a company for the employees as well as for the executives, how to use and how to not use AI for that company.
Yeah, so if executives accept AI recommendation without verification, the recommendations may appear logical, and the decision letter creates customer or compliance problems down the line. So which means the danger of not actually AI being used wrong. The danger is people actually assuming that AI is right all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So it means if we can summarize this part, many of the largest AI risks aren't technical, they are behavioral, following all what you said.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because for a long time, if you look at how we've used technology as a culture, as a society, people kind of believe technology. If it came from a computer, well, you just believe that was true because the computer's really smart, doesn't make mistakes. And now we're at a point, I think, in society where because AI has hallucinations, has answers sometimes, now people are very kind of the computer, so to say, in the system, right? They're not always trusting. Some trust everything. I know I don't trust as much as I used to of what gets sent to me or is computer generated. I think part of that is I think people have seen these hallucinations. They've seen things come from a system. That system was programmed by a human somewhere, most likely at the time. So there was an error in there and it produced the wrong. And so as that happens, you start to get mistrusting, you develop this mistrust of information or computer generated. So I think that's also factoring in because now AI does things on a much larger scale and a much faster pace. And so when it's wrong, boy, its impact is huge, right? It can be very big. Versus it was more isolated in the past. Something went wrong. So it's interesting how the human interaction with our technology systems has changed over time. And I think there's more of a level of mistrust these days than there was, you go back 10, 20, probably even 50 years on that one, right?